Have you ever found out something so shocking about your own family that it made you question everything you thought was real? I did. And it started the day my grandfather asked me that question. How do you spend your $3,400,000 trust fund? I remember freezing. My mouth went dry. What trust fund? I asked. He just smiled. The kind of smile that hides something. The kind of smile that tells you are about to find out something you were never supposed to know. I grew up believing my family was comfortable but not rich. My parents always talked about money like it was something sacred, limited, and hard to earn. My father worked long hours at a law firm. My mother managed the house, and I did my best to never ask for too much. I learned early that "we cannot afford it" was the phrase that ended every dream. So when Grandpa dropped that question over Sunday dinner, I felt like someone had ripped a hole in reality. He looked old but sharp, the kind of man who never forgot a detail. "You did not know," he said, still smiling, like this was a game. "Your father did not tell you about the trust your grandmother set up when you were born?" My father's fork clattered against the plate. My mother froze mid-bite. The room went silent. Grandpa's words hung in the air like smoke. After a few seconds, my father spoke. "Dad, that is not something to discuss at dinner." His voice was cold, controlled, almost rehearsed. Grandpa chuckled, leaned back in his chair and said, "Maybe, but secrets rot families, son. You should know that better than anyone." That night, after everyone left, I could not stop thinking about it. A trust fund? Millions of dollars? Why had I never heard about it? My parents refused to talk, brushing it off as a misunderstanding. "Your grandfather's memory is fading," my mother said, avoiding my eyes. "He says strange things sometimes," but I knew she was lying. The tension in her voice, the way her hands trembled when she poured her wine. The silence that followed every question. It all screamed one thing. They were hiding something big. So I started digging. I went through old drawers, tax papers, files. Nothing. It was like the trust fund had never existed. But Grandpa was not the kind of man to make things up. He was meticulous, calculated, sometimes cruel, but never careless with the truth. The following weekend, I drove to his estate alone, hoping he would talk. He was sitting in his study, surrounded by shelves of old books and family portraits. "I was wondering when you would come," he said without looking up. "You look just like your grandmother when you are angry." I sat across from him. My hands clenched. "Was it true?" I asked. "About the trust fund?" He smiled again, softer this time. "Of course it was true. Your grandmother wanted to make sure you would always be taken care of, no matter what your father did." My heart skipped. "What do you mean by that?" He looked out the window for a long time, then said, "You should ask him about the night she died." Those words chilled me. My grandmother's death had always been described as peaceful, a heart attack in her sleep. But now there was a shadow over it. I wanted to press him for more, but he just waved his hand and said, "Be careful. Emily, some truths come with a cost." When I left his house, I felt something had shifted inside me. A seed of doubt had taken root, and it was growing fast. I started paying closer attention at home. The late-night phone calls my father took in the study, the locked drawer in his desk, the way he tensed every time. Grandpa's name came up. Everything pointed to one thing. He was hiding the money. One night, after everyone went to bed, I went into his office. I found the locked drawer easily, but it was sealed with a small digital lock. It took me 2 hours and a few online tutorials to crack it. Inside, there were bank statements, legal documents, and one letter that looked old and worn. The letter was addressed to me, in my grandmother's handwriting. I remember my hands shaking as I opened it. "Dearest Emily," it began, "if you are reading this, then something has gone wrong. I set up a trust fund for you because I wanted you to have choices in life. Your father, he did not agree. He believes control is love, but it is not. If he has hidden this from you, then know that he has done worse things than you can imagine. Be strong, my darling. Find the truth and do not let him bury it." I sat there for hours staring at the letter. My chest hurt. My eyes burned. My grandmother had always been the light in our family, the one who made everything feel safe. And now, even from the grave, she was warning me. I confronted my father the next morning. I laid the letter on the table and said, "Explain this." He looked at it, then at me, his face unreadable. "Where did you get that?" he asked. "Does it matter?" I said. "You stole my inheritance, did you not?" He sighed, rubbed his temples, and said, "You do not understand what you are dealing with." I felt something snap inside me. "Then make me understand," I said. His eyes darkened. "That money was never meant for you to have. Your grandmother, she was manipulated. She did not know what she was doing. You are too young, too reckless. You would have thrown it all away." I laughed bitterly. "So you decided to steal it instead?" His jaw tightened. "I protected it," he said. "For you. For the family. You should be thanking me." That was the moment I realized. The man sitting across from me was not my father. He was a stranger, someone who had built his life on power, lies, and control. And I decided right then that I would not let him win. Over the next few weeks, I gathered everything I could. I copied files, photographed documents, and even traced the lawyer who had handled the trust. His name was Daniel Ward, and after a few calls, he agreed to meet me in secret. We met at a diner on the edge of town. Daniel was nervous, constantly glancing over his shoulder. "You should not be asking about this," he said quietly. "Your father does not take kindly to people digging." I leaned closer. "Just tell me the truth. Is the trust real?" He hesitated, then nodded. "It was. Your grandmother's estate created it shortly before her death. It was meant to transfer to you when you turned 21. But a few weeks after she passed, your father presented new paperwork, signed, supposedly, by her, that redirected the funds to his control until further notice. He said it was her wish." I felt my blood run cold. "Was it her signature?" I asked. He looked away. "I do not think so. But no one wanted to fight him. He had power. He had influence." I left the diner shaking. My father had forged documents. He had stolen millions that were meant for me. And worse, he had possibly lied about my grandmother's death. That night, I went back to Grandpa's house. He was waiting for me, as if he knew I would come. "You found it, did you not?" he said quietly. I nodded. He forged her signature. Grandpa sighed, eyes heavy with something that looked like guilt. "I knew," he said. I did not have proof. Your father has always been ambitious. Too ambitious." I looked at him, trying to understand. "Why did you not stop him?" His face twisted, and for the first time, I saw something like fear in his eyes. "Because I was not innocent either," he said. He learned from me. Those words sank deep. Everything I thought I knew about my family was unraveling. The trust fund, the lies, the control. It was all part of something darker, something older. I asked him one more question before I left. "What happened the night she died?" He stared at me for a long time, then said softly, "Your grandmother was going to change her will that night. She told me she could not live with the lies anymore. The next morning, she was gone. I drove home with tears in my eyes, a storm in my head and one clear goal in my heart. I would find out what really happened to my grandmother, and I would make my father pay for every lie he had ever told." When my grandfather's lawyer handed me that thick brown envelope, my hands were shaking so bad I could barely open it. Inside, there were records, bank statements, signed documents, and photos of my father. My father, standing with a woman I had never seen before, outside a luxury property in Miami. The same property that was supposed to belong to me. The same property that had been quietly sold 2 years ago with my forged signature. I felt the air leave my lungs. My father had not just hidden the trust fund, he had stolen it. For years he made me believe I had nothing, that I was irresponsible, unworthy, incapable of managing money. Meanwhile, he was using my inheritance to build a new life behind my back. The lawyer looked uncomfortable, like he had seen this kind of family drama too many times. He said softly, "Your father transferred most of the assets under a shell company. It looks like he's been funneling money for a while. We can trace it back, but it might take time." I nodded, numb. Time was something I had plenty of, but patience? That was gone. When I got home that night, I sat in the dark for hours. The city lights bled through the blinds, but I could not stop staring at my reflection in the window. I thought about every lie my father had told me. Every time he made me feel small. Every time he called me ungrateful or spoiled. I finally realized he had built his pride on my silence. The next morning, I decided silence was over. I started by visiting my mother's old friend Caroline, a woman my father despised. She ran a small accounting business in town. She had been close to my mom before she died, and she always seemed to know more than she said. When I told her what I had found, she just sighed and said, "Your mom tried to warn you, sweetie. She wanted to protect you, but your dad, he was always 2 steps ahead." That was when Caroline showed me something I did not expect, a folder she had kept for years. Inside were copies of letters my mother had written before she died, letters to the family attorney, letters that were never answered, letters that talked about the same trust fund, and how she feared my father was manipulating it. I read every word. My mother had known everything, and she tried to stop him. By the time I walked out of Caroline's office, I knew what I had to do. I was going to take everything back. I contacted the lawyer again and told him to start the legal process. But I also did something my father would never expect. I started pretending to forgive him. I began visiting more often, bringing dinner, asking about his health, pretending to reconnect. He seemed relieved, maybe even proud, thinking his manipulative charm still worked. He would tell me stories about how hard it was to raise me and how money changes people. The irony burned through me every time, but I smiled and listened. Then one evening, when we were sitting on his porch, drinking iced tea like nothing was wrong, I said, "Dad, I finally checked my accounts. I know about the trust fund." He froze. The glass slipped slightly in his hand, ice cubes clinking. He tried to recover quickly. "What trust fund?" "You must be mistaken. You know how these banks are, mixing up names." I leaned forward and said quietly, "Do not lie to me again. I know everything. About Miami, about the shell company, about Mom's letters." He stared at me like I had pulled the floor out from under him. His mouth opened, then closed. He whispered, "You were not supposed to find out." There it was. The truth he never meant to say. In that moment, I realized he did not feel sorry. He was only scared of being exposed. I said, "You ruined Mom's trust. You ruined mine, but I am not going to scream or cry or beg. I am going to make sure everyone knows who you really are." For the first time, my father looked old. Really old. Like the guilt he had buried for years finally cracked his face open. After that night, everything changed fast. My lawyer filed the claim, and within weeks, my father's accounts were frozen. His reputation in town collapsed. People he had bragged to for years suddenly avoided him. Old business partners demanded answers. My father tried to spin the story, saying I was being influenced, but no one bought it. And then came the final blow. The lawyer discovered a safety deposit box registered under my father's name, containing the last piece of evidence, recordings of conversations between him and the trustee. The tapes made it clear. He had orchestrated everything. My mother had begged him to stop. She had even threatened to go public. That was the last recorded conversation before she died in what the police called a car accident. I listened to that tape at least 10 times. Her voice broke halfway through, and his stayed calm, cold, dismissive. That was when I knew. It was not just theft. It was betrayal deeper than money. When I confronted him about the tape, he did not deny it. He just said, "She was going to destroy everything I built." I said, "She was the only one who loved you." He looked away. Love is weak. That was the last conversation I ever had with my father. Weeks later, he was found dead in his study. Heart attack, they said. But when I walked into that room during the police inspection, I saw something that still haunts me. On the desk, next to a half-empty glass, was the same brown envelope the lawyer had given me months ago. Inside it, every document I had used against him, returned neatly in place. On top, a handwritten note. It said, "You wanted the truth. Now you have it." I should have felt closure. I should have felt free. But all I felt was hollow. Because in the end, revenge did not bring peace. It only showed me how deep the darkness in our family really went. The inheritance came through a month later, all $3.4 million legally restored. But I could not touch it. Every dollar felt poisoned. So I gave most of it away. To charity, to scholarship funds under my mother's name. I kept just enough to start over, far away from that house, that town, that last name. Now, when people ask me about my family, I say I do not have one. But sometimes, late at night, I hear my father's voice in my head, cold, calm, confident, and I think about that question he asked me years ago. "How do you spend your $3,400,000 trust fund?" Now I know the real answer. I spent it finding the truth, and the truth cost me everything.